Well, Michael, good afternoon. Welcome. It's a pleasure to talk with you. Thank you for taking some time.
Yeah, thanks for having me on here.
We've talked a few times, and I think you have a really interesting running story, and I think there's a lot of cool things that you've been doing. I think maybe just to start, a lot of the other runners and listeners may not know that much about you. I'd love if you could just take a second and kind of tell us a little bit more about yourself and how you got started running.
So I'm 46 years old. I started running in high school and college. I was on the track team. I was a jumper. I was a pole vaulter, so I wasn't doing any long distances back then until college. Then I did start training for my first marathon, and my coach thought I was crazy because I had my marathon workouts posted with all the rest of them in the stadium. And he's like, "What are you doing, man? You just got to run down the runway. There's no reason for you to run 16 miles after track practice." But then did my first marathon in '98. That was Chicago, and then got hooked. Now I'm 30 marathons in and loving it.
What made you sign up for that first one, though, that first Chicago? What was it that made you go from being a pole vaulter to saying, I want to run a marathon?
My brother ran the same race with me too. So he's primarily a bicyclist, and he ran that marathon with me. That was his one and done, but I kept it going. I did another one in '99, and then I took a long time off and started back again in 2017.
A lot of people do one. Some people do two marathons. You've done 30. What made you keep going after you did that first one?
I just get hooked on the feeling, the finish line feeling, meeting the people. And now it's more like a family reunion every time I go to a race. I'm getting ready to head to Boston, and it's just been so much fun already, coordinating with all the people, making dinner reservations and plans for the whole weekend. I don't know if I'm more excited for the race or just to see everybody out there.
When you think over your running experience and your running journey, is there a favorite memory that pops in your mind?
So my favorite has got to be my PR marathon. This was last November.
At 45 years old?
I was 46.
46.
I'm about to be 47. So 46 years old. This was actually it was my second to last marathon. Pulled a PR, and it was my third in 3 weekends, back to back to back. So I did 3 marathons in 14 days. I did Marine Corps Marathon, New York City, and then Rebel Big Bear.
Oh my God.
So Rebel Big Bear, it was kind of an interesting start to the race. Everything was kind of last minute. We were on the buses going to the start line and, checking the times. We're like, there's no way we're going to start on time. Everything's late. And then, we got dropped off about the time it was supposed to start. Everybody's in lines for the porta potties. They're saying the gear check truck is leaving in 3 minutes. Everybody's freaking out. So it's kind of super hectic. And it was like, walk up to the start line and just go. I didn't really have time to mentally settle in, stretch, warm up or anything. It was just get there and go. So it took me a minute to relax into my pace. And then at the halfway point, I was wearing a pace band, and I was checking at the halfway, and I saw that I was 20 seconds behind a 3-hour marathon. And so I was like, all right, no problem. I can make it up. And then I was just mile by mile working in that mile and nothing else. And I started slowly picking it off, like 30 seconds under, 45 seconds under, a minute under, and then started building that gap. And then I finally finished at 2:55:42.
Wow.
46, not bad for an old man.
Not bad at all for anyone. That's amazing. Wow.
Thank you. And then I had 2 friends right there at the finish line. So it was a really exciting moment. I had no idea where I was at in that last mile because I was just pushing. And then I stopped my watch and I looked and I was like, oh my God.
So that's an incredible PR story that you set. And it's crazy that you were able to do that when you did it. So congratulations on that. But what I think is interesting, you kept running after that. And you've had a bit of a run streak, I guess, for a while now. I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, so today was day 999. Tomorrow's my big day, the comma day. So my minimum is a 5K a day. It started July 18th, 2020. Yeah. So I do a lot of charity runs, and I run for the Organization for Autism Research. So they asked me to take over their social media, and it was in the middle of COVID, so everything was virtual at the time. So they're like, take over the social media. We're doing this Active for Autism 5K. It's a 9-day window. Anybody can run the 5K in that 9 days. So I was like, if I'm taking this over, I'm going to run a 5K every day of that 9 days. And then I just never stopped.
After those 9 days, did you say to yourself, I would love to keep running for 1,000 days? Or what were you kind of thinking at the time?
I didn't know where it was going at that point. I kind of struggled through that 9 days because I'm used to, not anymore. I was used to having 1 to 2 days off a week, but pushing through and running every day. And after the 9 days, you start forming a habit. And then the first month, you're locked in. But getting through that first 30 days was the big thing. And I didn't really know where I was going, but once I started hitting bigger numbers, you hit 100, you hit 250, you hit a year, there's no stopping.
And I think what's impressive, I've heard about run streaks before, but typically the minimum miles, the minimum amount is like a mile a day. 5K a day is that's very impressive. What has been the most challenging part of keeping that run streak alive?
So I don't know. It hasn't really been a challenge just because I've formed that habit. So it's like I wake up, I start my day, and my run is part of that. And if I don't run in the morning, I just kind of feel off for the rest of the day. So a lot of times I'll do evening runs with a group of guys, but those are days where I do 2 because I have to have my morning 5K.
Yeah.
At least a 5K. I mean, that's just the minimum sometimes, up to, depending on where I'm at with my training, between a 5K and 22 miles.
One of my favorite question to ask our runners is that you don't just run, you do other things, right? You obviously have a business, you obviously have friends, you have interests, you have other things that you're taking care of. How do you fit it in? How do you make running a part of your daily lifestyle? What type of things have you found work for you?
Part of my startup routine, and I don't feel right unless I get that run in. And also a lot of my friends are also runners, so we have the same lifestyle, same interests. It's just a good, healthy way to get your blood flowing, get the work day started.
Yeah. So you're definitely a first thing in the day runner.
In the morning, not necessarily first thing, because a lot of times I'll get going doing chores at the house or whatnot. And then I'm like, oh, I got to get going. So I got to get that 5K in before I head to work.
Nice.
But it is definitely a morning activity.
I know you're headed to Boston later on this week. How are you feeling about Boston 2023?
This will be my 3rd year doing Boston. I'm really looking forward to seeing a bunch of friends, family. I'm going with my dad. My dad is running the BAA 5K with me. Just more of a family reunion. I'm not really pushing it too hard in the race this year, but definitely looking forward to seeing the crowds.
Yeah. I know you said you're recovering from a cold, which is, that always stinks right before race day. Having run Boston now 2 times, and now it'll be your 3rd time. What is it that you like about going back there?
That's the prestigious event in running is Boston. That you qualify to get in or you run for charity to get in. It's a big deal, and it's the best. You see the best of the best out there.
Having run now 30 marathons, is there a particular marathon that is your favorite? Is Boston at the top of that list?
Boston's at the top, but it's not the top.
Okay.
New York City. I love New York City and energy. There's just so many people. The crowd participation. Chicago's another fantastic one, but there's just nothing like the people of New York City.
So you have Boston coming up in a couple weeks, and then you have another exciting race coming up after that. I would love to hear more about what you got cooking.
So a couple weeks after Boston, I'm back home for a solid week. I get back on Tuesday, and then I fly out the following Tuesday to Beijing because I'm going to be running the Great Wall Marathon.
How did that come on your radar?
It's been on my radar for a while. There's a website that had the 5 hardest marathons in the world, and one of them is right outside my window. It's the Pikes Peak Marathon, and I did that. I'm looking at it right now. I did that in 2021, and then this year in one of the Boston chat groups on Facebook, a good friend of mine, Alan, he'd said something pertaining to the Great Wall Marathon. Basically, anybody in the area, any information about Beijing, and I was like, I read that and I was like, Alan, we need to talk. And before I knew it, like that night, we were both signed up, one-on-one emails with the race director. It all just happened. So there was really no thought going into it. We just jumped and locked ourselves in, and here we go.
Do you have any idea what to expect? What makes the marathon so hard on the Great Wall?
So it's a lot of ups and downs, a lot of steep, uneven. You're on the wall, and there's 5,000 plus steps of climbing, and I guess it's pretty grueling. Temperatures get pretty hot. Yeah, but I'm excited.
Annual will only be a couple weeks post Boston, so
Yeah.
hopefully you won't be tired then, but that'll make it even more difficult. That's pretty cool.
I've done that before. I've done the back-to-back marathons. I'm not really worried about it because I'm not pushing for time. It's not one that you're going to have a PR for sure.
Right.
So we're just going. We're going to enjoy the experience. We're going to run on the Great Wall, and it's one of the 7 wonders of the world. It's going to be an amazing time.
What a cool experience.
Then the following week after that, I'm going to Bangkok, and a friend of mine signed us up for a 10K just for fun.
Oh, wow. The Pikes Peak Marathon you mentioned, that's one that I've always thought was kind of cool. Was that on your radar because it's the hometown marathon and it's right out the window? What made you decide to run up a mountain?
Yeah, I've done it before just in training. I run on those trails all the time. And just being here in Colorado Springs, part of the Pikes Peak Roadrunners, it's one of the major events every year. And then in 2020, everything was shut down, but Pikes Peak Marathon still went on. So then in 2021, when everything was starting to ramp up again, it was like, I'm going to do that this year.
Yeah.
So, me and a good friend of mine, we signed up. We did the trifecta. There's the Garden of the Gods, 10-mile, the Bar Trail Mountain Race, which is halfway up Pikes Peak, and then the Pikes Peak Marathon. So it's a series, and then we both placed for our age group.
Wow. Yeah, I'm not surprised to hear that at all. Do you work with a coach today? Do you kind of have a training plan? How do you plan for something like Boston, for instance?
I don't have a coach. I just because I have kind of an extensive background in running and I know how my body works. Last year I focused more and I made myself a training plan. This year, coming out of last year with the PR and everything, I'm still recovering from that mentally and physically, and just kind of taking it easy this spring season, and I'm going to ramp up again for the fall. So I'll make a training plan more for the fall race season.
Yeah. When you do make a marathon training plan, for instance, when you were able to set your PR of 2:55, what were some of the key workouts that you have found over time help you when training for that distance?
So I always do my long runs on Sundays, and then to build endurance, I backed it on Mondays with a kind of a middle distance run, kind of rest on Tuesdays, and then through the week, kind of ups and downs of workouts and resting, just knowing how my body responds to everything.
Yeah. Do you think about hitting like weekly mileage goals when you're training for the marathon? Is that something that's in the back of your mind?
I don't have specific numbers in mind. I mean, it all does kind of correlate as I'm building up my long runs towards the end. But I don't have like numbers that I have to hit every week.
Yeah. Is there a long run distance that you try to build up to before the marathon?
I do. Yeah. I'll peak at 22 miles 3 weeks before the race. And then I start tapering down.
22.
Yeah.
How often do you run? Do you run that just once before the race, a couple times before the race?
I usually hit the 22 just once. So I'll build it up. I'll have 16s, 18s, 20s. And then that 22 is just the once. And then I start tapering down.
Do you run that particular long run like at close to marathon pace, well slower than marathon pace? How do you think about the speed for your long runs in your build?
For me, the long runs on Sundays are just building the endurance. I'll work on speed in shorter runs during the week. So I've had horrible long runs and then come out with a PR marathon.
It's so interesting. Yeah, I've had similar experiences too. Yeah. And then sometimes I feel like I feel like I don't run enough of what I think should be the marathon pace. If I ran faster than it in workouts or slower, but not really at it, but then I'm able to go out there and execute. And it's just, it's interesting. I think what makes it even more impressive is, you're basically your own coach, and you can probably coach other people based upon all the things that you've learned, I think.
Yeah, probably could. I've thought about it, but with my business here, multiple businesses, I'll get enough on my plate.
Well, then maybe one more question. I should have asked it earlier. So you said multiple businesses. You own a tattoo shop. How did you get involved with that?
I started tattooing back in '97, so I've been doing that. This year will be 26 years. I started when I was 21. When I was in college, I was in college for architecture, back before computers took everything over. So it was a lot of hand drawing. And then I went with some friends and got my first tattoo, got hooked right away. And then just being in that drawing background and in the tattoo environment kind of put everything together. And some of the local artists recognized that. And finally, one guy said, "Hey, I know somebody that's looking for somebody." And he hooked me up with my mentor, and the rest is history.
Having run since your first marathon in 1998, you probably have met a lot of gears and brands, shoes, clothing, nutrition, etc., that have helped you. Is there anything that you find is vital to your running experience?
Number one right here.
Oh, look at that. Yes.
I start and finish my day with Peregrune vitamins and supplements. I also run with Crank Sports e-gels and e-fuel, Sur Phyto Performance, Alt Red, and I'm recently in a startup of a company, Inherent Endurance. So we've designed some running shorts for long distance runners. Through the years, trying different products, there was nothing that really had all the features that I wanted. And now we're in the startup of that. We've had a small production run done. We've got 200 pieces in stock right now. Long journey, starting up a new business. So
definitely.
From design, we started design last June. So we're pushing a year now, and we're finally getting it going. But yeah, it's been a fun journey. I partnered with a friend of mine. He owns Inherent Clothier. He's more fashion, but he knew the ins and outs of the clothing industry, and I had the idea with the athletic wear. So we're both learning from this. He didn't know much about athletic wear. I didn't know much about clothing. We're both navigating through it all. It's been quite a fun process.
Congrats on getting that started, and much success. I'll do what I can to help spread the word.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Well, hey, last question for you. What's next as you think about a year from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now? What type of things are you looking to accomplish in your running journey?
Oh man, that is a tough question, because after I ran that 2:55, I just had that feeling of, now what? I achieved all the goals that I thought I would never be able to. So now I'm, concentrating on my clothing brand, keeping up with my race schedule, just out there having fun, meeting more people. Definitely still pushing my times, trying to keep qualifying for Boston every year, just keeping the ball rolling.
Well, Michael, small business owner, entrepreneur, 255 marathoner, 1 day away from a 1,000 5K running streak, 1,000 day 5K running streak. Pretty impressive. So thanks for taking a few minutes and chatting with us.
Thank you. This has been fun. Thanks for having me on.